So when we found out we were expecting our oldest, I hopped on Google and typed in how to homeschool, which is a terrifying Google. And so I did what is a very millennial thing to do. I actually looked for a quiz to tell me what type of homeschool mom I might be.
Pretty much any church or denomination, you see instances of scandal or abuse where people who know all the right answers fall into atrocious sin. Every mom, we want to help our kids to love what is right, not just know what is right. How do we encourage that love?
If you only ever give a rule, it just becomes this piece of head knowledge, which the child does not care about. And so I would tell my kids not to act like you used to scrub. And even that is an example of giving an image and not a rule. It means stop whining. It means stop complaining, stop acting rudely to your siblings, but used to scrub is a far more terrifying concept to them. Make sure that any story you read is worth an image bearer reflecting it back to themselves. It's not just a children's book. It's actually teaching them something about beauty, something about a way of life.
How do moms encourage kids not just to know what is right, but to love what is right? Today we discuss all this and more with Autumn Kern, homeschooling mama of 4, Charlotte Mason mentor, and host of the Commonplace podcast. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more conversations like this. This also helps me bring on more wonderful guests like Autumn onto our shows. And if you're drowning in motherhood, make sure to check the link below to see the courses that have helped me thrive as a mom. And now on to my conversation with Autumn. Well, Autumn, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. I'm really excited.
I've been so excited to talk to you specifically because I think your work is really significant in that it equips moms not just to teach their children to know the right things, because we all know right and wrong. We all have that internal conscience, but you actually equip moms to teach their kids to help love the right things. And we are going to dive into some of that today. But I wondered if you could just start briefly by sharing a little bit about yourself, how you came to become a homeschool mom and get into your work.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Autumn and I have 4 young children, 9 and under. And I am married to my college sweetheart, who was my introduction, in a sense, to homeschooling. Of course, I knew that homeschooling existed, but it wasn't until we were getting to know one another. It was a fall day on our college campus, and he just let me know that the woman he married would be homeschooling his children. It was a conviction he had. He was the second-generation homeschooler in our home, so I've always thought that was a great compliment to my mother-in-law, who homeschooled him along with his 4 siblings, and they loved it. They have nothing but good things to say about that time together with her, which I think is just, the heart of a homeschool mom. It's what you hope is the fruit when you finish. But because of him and because of his family, the longer that I was around them, I kind of warmed up to this idea. At the point that he told me that I was going to graduate school, I thought he was very handsome, but I thought, let's put a pin in this. I'm not sure I'm really going to be homeschooling anyone's children, but we'll see what happens. But fast forward a little bit, and I'd fallen in love with his family, their sense of family togetherness, the shared culture and history they had, and I was very warm to the idea. So when we found out we were expecting our oldest, I hopped on Google, like a lot of people, and typed in how to homeschool, which is a terrifying Google.
Absolutely.
So many things that will pop up and overwhelm you. You thought you were just going to spend a little bit of time reading, and instead there are millions, if not billions, of results very quickly. And so I did what is a very millennial thing to do. I actually looked for a quiz to tell me what type of homeschool mom I might be.
Of course.
And it exists, guys. I'm sure there are more now. This was back in 2016, so I'm sure there are more now, but I took this quiz and sort of got my bearings, if you will, in the homeschool world and got some terminology around things. And what I didn't know then was, at that point, I thought I was just figuring out how to teach my kids at home, but really I consider it more like a wardrobe moment, like in Narnia, where I was pulled into this enchanting view of the world. Everything shifted. My desire to impart wisdom to my children, not just school knowledge to my children, all of it, our home habits, our atmosphere from the start just started to grow in a different way. And so it's now been almost 10 years, and it's been a beautiful journey of learning to go further up and further in with my kids and knowing God's love and how to rightly relate to him and to others. And basically, I use Narnia at every point that I can. I just look over there. There's a copy of the Narnia out that I didn't even know was out. And so I use that a lot in my work, and you will hear it echoed probably in most of our conversation today, because I do think it explains everything that you need to know in life.
I love that. That's encouraging that your husband wanted to homeschool after his experience being homeschooled, because I know we all know people that were homeschooled and regret it. So that's really neat. So was that something that was a stressor to you when you heard that, or were you just like, oh, we'll just see how it goes?
Oh, that's a great question. We were getting to know each other. My husband is He's a very principled man. So once he decides upon something, it means he's thought about it thoroughly and he's decided. So he kind of just decided it was going to be us internally.
Okay.
And I just wasn't as up to date on that decision yet. So initially I thought, well, that's great for your wife, and I understand that you recognize how much work that is on a mother. Like, he even understood the cost to his mom. She would have counted it as a blessing always, but he also knew that she did not do other things so that she could homeschool them. And so I respected that he said it at the start, and I wasn't very overwhelmed by it because I've always loved school. Now, I would differently define school now as a homeschooling mother than I did as a student, but I've always loved learning, and I had good teachers in my public schools that I went to, and they fostered a sense of love that took me into my liberal arts college, and really they were seeds that have grown into what I do today. But I always loved school. So when I did that Google search, I found myself overwhelmed by the sheer options and of the things, the opportunities available to me in the modern world. But I wasn't overwhelmed at the idea of spending time with my children, learning about things together, because it just sounded like doing school and being a forever student.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I know I was homeschooled and there were so many fewer options for homeschool curriculum than there are now. And so it's like so exciting as a mom, but it can feel really overwhelming when you're starting out. I know a lot of my listeners are in like their younger years, so we have like a lot of moms with preschoolers who listen, and you're a little bit further down the road, but I was curious if you have any ways that you would encourage moms to start with their education with their little kids, whether it's informal or formal, but ways to help their kids just spark that love of learning, because I think we all want that as moms. We want our kids to love learning, but it can be easy to kind of snuff that out really early by like going too crazy in the beginning years. So do you have any recommendations for that?
Absolutely. I think that moms of littles, well, first let me say all mothers teach. So even if you know your kids will be going to school, all mothers are teaching their children at all times. And so if you don't feel like you're the teacher, air quotes around that, you absolutely are. And being a mother rather, is this God-given role in which your children are receptive to your instruction, especially in the early years. They want to be just like you. They want to be around you. And so when I think about how to lay the foundation for healthy learning throughout the years, you really need to protect and nourish this special time. Now, you will never meet a mom who is more eager to homeschool or start teaching than someone with a 3-year-old. Yeah. And I say that because I was that mom. Was the mom with the 3-year-old looking at preschool curriculum and trying to plan out like not a real school day, but kind of a school day, because I was just super excited. And my oldest is a girl and we're very similar and we like doing things together. So it was a very natural thing for us to kind of start ordering our days. I also just had 2 women over from church just last week. Their eldest are both 3 and they are dying to start homeschooling, right? Like they want to start. And so what I said to them and what I'll say to your audience is the same thing. This time is special and unique for the age and development of your children. It is not proper to give them something that is meant for later years now. It will only do damage. And I like to use the analogy of food or feasting. It's very common in the educational world that I live in. But just like you can't give honey to a baby before the age of 1 because it will hurt them, it doesn't mean honey is bad. It just means there's a proper time to give something to a child, a proper way and a proper amount. And that is true with any knowledge. And so I like to use this 3-frame tool, which I get from a British educator named Charlotte Mason. I'm sure some of your audience will have heard of her if they're interested in home education. Her name is not necessarily important, but her framework is helpful. She looks at 3 instruments we have as mothers to teach our kids, and they're very natural. All moms should feel encouraged by them. The first is your atmosphere. The second is discipline, by which she means habits. And the third is ideas, or life, which means ideas. And so the atmosphere of your home is where a lot of moms of littles spend a lot of time, because you're usually home doing very ordinary, commonplace things. And so in your atmosphere, you're just trying to teach your children how to rightly relate. What does it look like to love God, to obey him? What does it look like to read his word, to worship at church? What does it look like to love your neighbor? Who's your closest neighbor? Well, your siblings, your parents, literally the kid next door. How do we live in a way that we honor the things we have? How do we clean up our toys? How do we take care of our body? How do we brush our teeth? And how do we snuggle? This is actually deeply foundational for how your children will grow up and move in the world. It doesn't sound like school, and I know that can be hard for the eager mother with the sincere desire to teach and love on her kid, but you are shaping an orientation in the world in these early years, one that they will never explicitly communicate to someone when they're older, but will implicitly be in their souls and in their bones. It's just how they're going to move. And that starts with snuggling mom in the morning while she drinks coffee, to reading good books, to learning habits. So the second one was habits, how you unload the dishwasher, how you make your bed, how you help start a load of laundry. Onto the idea of ideas, what books do you read, what songs do you sing, what are the conversations like in your home? It's all very ordinary, and yet it's absolutely extraordinary, the life you give your children in those early years. So I, for moms of young ones, say protect that, build into that, set up your home to be a fruitful, loving place, because the school table will always come later. And all of these habits, one, shape your child in ways that you can't get back later necessarily, and two, will just make that transition more seamless.
That's really good. Why do you think homeschool moms why is it so appealing to start early? Is it just that we want structure or we want validation? What was it for you?
That's a great question. The validation one is definitely a sneaky one.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many facets to this, Hannah, and it really might depend on the person. I guess generally I would say many of us were schooled in a more systematized way. So that's one thing. Like you mentioned earlier, homeschooling today, it's a lot easier to find resources. It's way more common to homeschool. It's not seen as weird. Actually, if I can plug a book of someone else that I just read about the history of homeschooling, and she walks through this history of homeschooling in America. And it's absolutely fascinating how we've moved from it being a weird thing that no one did to being very beautiful and popular on Instagram. So I think now a lot of us are moving into a world that we didn't experience, and that's hard. So naturally, we try to recreate what we did at school at home. We think, okay, that was education for most of us. Now let's just make it happen here. So we're going to need workbooks, and we're going to need a schedule, and we're going to need blocks of study and breaking things into subjects. And it's just what we know. And so it's what we try to create. So I would say generally that's part of it, is the modern desire to systematize and recreate what we've experienced. But then individually, each mom's going to be a little bit different. And they're not all bad reasons. So one of mine was just excitement. I love spending time with my kids. I love creating things for them and ordering our days in a way that hopefully helps buoy them with the life and the spirit of God. Those things are all really beautiful, but you can kind of waterboard your kids with goodness. That's what I learned in the early years, that I could actually just be throwing so much goodness and beauty at them that I actually kind of kill it for them. They don't want to do it. And so you might be excited, but you might overreach. It may be fear. You're panicked, you don't know how to do it. And so you're desperately grasping at some resource that promises you that this will be the thing to get what you want. It could be validation. We all know what it feels like to say, I'm a mom, and add the word just in that sentence. Oh, I'm just a mom. Oh, I'm just at home. And that just completely cuts your own legs off in conversation with someone. And the response you might get might make it seem like you're not really doing anything that worthwhile, changing diapers and cooking food. I mean, who cares? But no, that absolutely matters. The way you do those things matters and educates your children. So it could be a lot of different reasons, but I think usually we're trying to imitate what we've done, and we don't yet know there's another way in which we educate that doesn't look like school in modern America.
That's really good. Yeah, I do think sometimes our children can almost become like our report cards. If we're at all academically inclined or we're successful in another sphere, then it's like, well, now no one will compliment me unless my child seems intelligent or smart or well-spoken or whatever. So I think, yeah, it can be a dangerous trap to fall into as a mom for sure. One of the things that I've been so excited to talk to you about specifically is the concept of imparting love of what is right and true to our kids, because I know like even Adolf Hitler, he was raised Roman Catholic. He knows the right things. In pretty much any church or denomination, you see instances of scandal or abuse where people who know all the right answers fall into atrocious sin. And I think every mom at the core, when we actually stop to think about it, we know we don't just want to give our kids ethics flashcards. I think you've mentioned that, or so they can repeat the right answer, but we want to help them love what is good and true and beautiful. And so I was curious, do you have any just like practical tips for how to encourage our kids to love what is right, not just know what is right? Because it's very easy for us moms to read a story that say, and that means we should all be kind to our sister. But how do we encourage that love in our hearts, in our children's hearts?
Yeah, it is definitely difficult not to fall into the temptation of moralizing something or making it didactic when the child is just supposed to receive a story. I even remember when my oldest was maybe 2, 3, 4, something like that. My first 3 came in quick succession, so all 3 of them were around then. There was a book that came out that was all about a kid who drew on the wall, and I was so tempted to buy it. It was very wrong that the child drew on the wall, because I had little drawings all over my walls at the point, which, back to right relating, is not a right relationship to the things around you, decorating the walls with your markers. But yes, it's so tempting. So I will get to the practical, but before we can, we have to go back into the philosophy. I know philosophy sounds like something like old guys in bow ties do in libriaries, but historically, philosophy has been the love of wisdom so that there is a practical outpouring of it. And so, yes, even you, mom of young kids, are a philosopher, whether or not you know it. And so we have to ask, what is a person? Because that's going to help us understand how a person loves or how they move in the world. So if we think about a person as indivisibly soul and body, made in the image of God, and therefore made to have communion with their creator, that's our baseline. Whatever we decide to do in educating our kids, in disciplining our kids, and discipling our kids has to rightly match that understanding of who our child is, right? Like, you've never met a mere mortal, to steal from C.S. Lewis. They are bearing the weight of glory even when they are 2 and running around in a diaper in your house. So from there, you have to ask, how are we formed? Well, scripture gives us clear indications of how God speaks to all parts of us. If we're an image bearer, then we have to think about the parts that make us a whole. We have our mind, we have our spirit, and we have our appetitive taste. And so this historically has been known as our head, our chest, and our belly. And we have to bring all 3 of these into harmony. If you have little kids, the belly is the primary driver of a small child. They're hungry, they're tired, they're cold, they need to use the bathroom, they need to snuggle. There are these sensations that are not bad. They're just the very human parts of us, and they're going to be their primary way of moving in the world. We know they're rational, their head, it's not always exactly where we want it to be. Their carrots are too orange, and so they throw them on the ground. Like, it doesn't make sense the way little kids act, right? And then their spirited can very easily go off track, where they're drawn by anger, quick reactions, impulse control, things like that. They haven't yet learned to rule themselves. This is a lifetime of work. No one should think their 6-year-old or their 16-year-old or even you as a maybe 32-year-old have fully ordered these things, right? It's the work of personhood, but it does help us think about how we help our children learn to love. So when we go about not giving ethics flashcards, I'm so glad you mentioned that, we don't ever want to hit something just from one angle. If you only ever give a rule, which is not a bad thing to do, but if you only give a rule, it just becomes this piece of head knowledge, which the child does not care about. If you have young kids, even as they age, my kids are 9, almost 8, almost 6, my older 3, and then we have a 1-year-old, so she's kind of in that younger category. But you can't force them to care. It doesn't matter how often I say that this thing is important or this thing matters in life. They can choose not to care. If it's not there, it's not going to be there. And that is humbling for a mom. So the first practical bit is to pray. You really should not be going and addressing your children regularly without praying about the same problem. That's the first thing. Secondly is to hit it from more than one angle. So of course you have a family rule. You may not hit your sibling. You need the rule. The rule is good. The rule gives them a boundary. But also you give them stories. You give them stories of courage, of kindness, of laying down their life. That may be scripture like the Good Samaritan. That may be something like a Narnia. You give them things that show them the beauty of the rule. So if you just give the ethics flashcard and you're like, this, tell the truth, telling a lie is bad. Okay, but when you show them a story like a fairy tale and the main character falls into deception and it destroys their life, if it brings about pain on their head, if it harms their family, now that is going to stick with a child. Again, you don't make it a didactic rule, you don't over-moralize it, you don't explain it to them. You let the image sit with them because their chest and their belly and their mind are what's known as the tripartite soul, and the soul receives images and reflects them back. So the more goodness you fill through stories, through music, through family experience, by modeling it yourself, and yes, by giving the rule, you allow them to understand what a good life is. And back to that question about what is a person, I'm sorry if this seems too philosophical, but if you go back to what is a person, then you are going to find that they are always moving towards what they think is a picture of the good life. We know this. So like for moms, a micro level of this might be you yell at everyone because everyone's screaming and throwing down on the floor in the kitchen and you just want it to be quiet. The thing you want more than anything in that moment is quiet. That has become your picture of the good life. And then of course you might have the macro version, like a good life is healthy adult children who enjoy being at home and with each other, who marry and have God-fearing homes, and that's your big vision and you're working towards that too. But whatever is currently shaped as your momentary good life is what you'll pursue, and you won't even think about it usually. No mom, to your point, Hannah, stands there and thinks, I'm gonna yell at these stinkers. I'm just going to yell and it's going to fix everything. Usually there's probably a little conscience voice saying, don't yell, pull back, don't yell. But it just comes out because what you want is quiet. So the children are the same thing. You have to help them shape that picture of the good life. And historically, that's been through good images and good imitation in front of them. So think about how you're living practically. What are you showing your children about the good life? Think about the stories you're reading them. Think about the toys you give them for play. Do they have costumes? Do they have swords? Can they go out and run in nature? things like that, and then give them the good rules, but only when they're couched in everything else.
That's so beautiful. And it's so true what you're saying about stories. I had a funny example that came to mind when you were talking. This is actually for me. So my husband and I were having some conflict. It wasn't a big conflict, but it was a few weeks of just turmoil in some way. And I was reading marriage books, and they say, you should be kind to each other. It brings out the best in each other, yada, yada, yada. But then we sit down and we watched You've Got Mail. And it's this story of two people that fall in love emailing each other, but in person they're enemies. And it doesn't tell you, but it shows you can literally bring out the worst in someone and hate that person in that moment. And it could be the same person and you fall in love with them. And it's like, but it's how you're relating to one another. And it was just very poignant because I was reading these books, like you're saying, I knew the rule, like I should be charitable to my spouse. I should be kind, but then seeing it play out on a screen or I'm sure in a book as well, right? Mm-hmm. It can have that similar effect where you realize, actually, that's not good. What I'm,
right. That's such a good example. I love that. The longer I'm a mom, the less I read parenting books. And it's not that I don't have recommendations for good ones or that I buy them for new moms or anything. It's just I have found that good literature gives me a more inspiring vision of what a virtuous wife and mother looks like and the ways it practically works out in the home, that I would rather read something like Little Men by Louisa May Alcott than go and read a parenting book, because I actually see in Jo March and in Plumfield the rhythms and habits of a healthy home life that I want to emulate and imitate, more so than just you need to lay down your life for your children and you need to pray for them. Well, yeah, of course. But what does it look like to have a convivial home? That's what I need to see to spur me on to love what's good. And the same is true for our kids. I love that example, though. You've Got Mail.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to what you were saying earlier about not just like you do have the rule. And I appreciate you saying that because I do think some people take it too far the other way. It's like, well, we just will have no boundaries, but we'll just present them with the feast. So you need to have both, which I think is just a really balanced perspective.
You see in scripture that God does speak to all parts of the image bearer. I don't think I continued that thought, but you see that he gives story, he gives parable, he gives poetry, he gives prose, he gives histories, and he gives law. And David loves the law. His delight is in the law of the Lord. And we know that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. And God has given boundaries that fall for us in pleasant places, and we need to obey them or else we will not have flourishing life. So to not give a rule would also be to fail your child. I just want it given the same way God gives it to us, or at least my encouragement is to do it in the context of all these other things that speak to all parts, because you don't know when that seed is going to land. But as long as you're giving those good images, to take from the parable of the soil, your seed could fall on really healthy soil if you've been giving a lot of beauty and goodness and truth to your children from various ways.
That's so good. Do you feel like stories, I know I've heard you speak in other places about the role of stories in children. What would you say is your favorite way to incorporate stories in your home, and what have been some of the benefits you've seen from doing that?
Ooh, I love the literary life of families. I think it's a way to create a shared culture, whether it be shared language or images. Like, who hasn't, quoted Peter Rabbit to one of their kids? Like, watch out, you're going to get in McGregor's garden, sort of thing. Or for us, Narnia is huge. And so I would tell my kids not to act like Eustace Scrub. And even that is an example of giving an image and not a rule. It means stop whining. It means stop complaining, stop acting rudely to your siblings. But Eustace Scrub is a far more terrifying concept to them. They don't want to be like Eustace Scrub, right? They don't want to be like that when they could be a Pevensey. So anyways, start early. Start early and explore the world of picture books. Make sure that any story you read is worth an image bearer reflecting it back to themselves. So if it is kind of dumbed down, nonsensical, hideous pictures and art, don't give it to your children. Give them the best. It doesn't mean they need to sit there and read, Dickens when they are 2. No, but there are beautiful picture books that echo real, true, good, beautiful things in elevated language, but that the child can take. And when we give our children stories, what I find is when you give them beautiful images and language, you help them extend the alphabet for explaining their own reality and therefore understanding their own reality. So if a child, say, they only have the vocabulary of your average 4-year-old or your average 10-year-old or whatever insipid phrase is going around the youth group for the 12-year-old, they're not going to be able to say lovely things about God, about themselves, about their life. If they can't say them, they can't think them. If they can't think them, they can't contemplate them, and they can't become part of who they are. So we want to, even in the earliest years, as we are reading Beatrix Potter, and we're reading Barbara Cooney, and we're reading Winnie the Pooh, these, again, like my first point, are foundational to an orientation in the world. It's not just a children's book. It's actually teaching them something about beauty, something about taste, something about language, and something about a way of life. So read all the time. read as much as you can with your little ones. If they struggle sitting still, give them Magnetiles or Legos or Duplo blocks or something. Give them a snack. Give them carrot sticks or pretzels. Make it fun and bake cookies. You know, you can really go all out if you want to have like a proper tea time, or you can just give them something to keep their hands kind of busy. And then give them time to enjoy and receive the story. So most little kids will say, again, as soon as you finish a book, right? They like the repetition. They like knowing that the same thing happens every time. But you have to teach the child, like, oh, let's go outside and let's go walk around. Let's go play for a bit. And you will then see that they have time to let those seeds bury in and start to grow fruit. And so it'll come out in their play. That's been one of the most exciting things, to answer your question about what I've seen in my home, is we've always read them really good books. I have a very high standard. I do see my home librarian self as like a guard at the gate of what goes into their minds through their eyes and their ears when it comes to stories. And we have consistently given them really good things, and I give God the glory for that. It comes out in their play. It comes out in the way they describe their own internal worlds. It comes out when they are actually dealing with real life situations later. I like to encourage people, my kids are very common. I use the word common in a lot of my work because we are just ordinary. And yet I will see little snippets of what their inner worlds are becoming. So, you know, they can fight in the back seat like any set of siblings can in the van. And I can't reach them because they're all the way in the third row, right?
Yeah.
And yet when someone is in need, when someone's just their, you know, fishing net goes down the creek and they yell, help, I will see my kids immediately rise to action and jump in again without thought, because their picture of the good life is, oh, you come to the service of other. Oh, a knight is always going to help. Oh, a princess is going to be kind to those who are left on the outside. Things like that will naturally happen, not because they're sitting there reciting the Kern family rules to themselves, but because they've been given through the stories pictures of who they want to be. And now they have the ability to practice that. But without those images, would they know to even try to be like that? Maybe not in the same way. So I give the credit to God's work through the stories for sure.
That's so cool. And it's cool when you see them pretending, you know, this very noble thing, because I do think that's how, like, that's their form of narration at that
absolutely.
age is just
That's
like,
great,
yeah, acting out what they want to be. I know I was laughing. I was mostly complaining with my sister about this, but we were learning about, they were just asking questions about bees, and we have a garden and this and that. Anyways, they were pretending that they had a bee's nest, and they got into a fight about whose it was. And I was like, I can't, usually we take away the toy. I can't take away your pretend hornet's nest. So I'm like, man, what do I do now? But I think in general, it's like, it's so cool because you don't really think, you're like, oh, I don't know if they're paying attention when we're out here just asking questions or talking about it. And then you see them acting that out, or acting out Pilgrim's Progress. Like our castle, we have a little play castle, and it's not just a castle, it's Doubting Castle. You know, it's just like, how do that's how they live what they've been thinking about from stories. So I think that's really, really powerful.
Right. I love to try and think, especially in the early years, how I can take what I want internally done and make it external. So if you want to help a child understand, you know, I had one son for a while, I wanted him to understand that he would have to fight sin. Like it was just going to kind of overtake him if he wasn't on guard of it. So we bought him a little dagger, and he wasn't allowed to play with it. It was to be kept on his person, and he was supposed to physically like swipe at the air as a physical reminder, I have to choose to obey. Because he just needed to make something internal that was kind of hard to understand external. But your comment on not Pride and Prejudice, which is not the same thing as Pilgrim's Progress.
But it is an alliteration.
Literary titles just flew out of my mouth. No, Pilgrim's Progress, I actually made at one point sort of like a celestial kingdom. Like I just drew it and taped it to the wall. And then we made a dragon, because we would play Dragon Folly a lot. Like what would Dragon Folly tell us, and what would Lady Wisdom tell us, and how do we fight Dragon Folly? But I made these cute little characters for everyone, so they could kind of see that you're on a path and you're moving either towards Dragon Folly or towards the celestial kingdom. Well, it really backfired on me, because one day one of my sons did not like that I was not allowing him some basic thing like, you know, cookies on demand or something. And he made a mommy person and put me right on top of the dragon.
You're like, this is you. You are one with Dragon Folly.
His assessment of my mothering was, you are way over here with the dragon. So I do love when the kids are squirrely and they kind of upend your usual routine.
Yeah.
But I also think that builds into your family culture as well, that, you know, these ridiculous things we're trying all together because we were all journeying. And so are we journeying together towards the kingdom or not? But that one still gets me.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And just that picture of, there's no neutral, you know, we're either, you know, pursuing God or we're pursuing evil. So that's really good. Okay, I want to change gears a little bit because I know we're running short on time, but one of the other things that you speak to a lot in your work is habit training, and this is something that was kind of a new concept to me. I remember asking someone, how do you encourage excellence in your children without yelling at them all the time? Like, to me, those are like the two things. If you care about something, you yell at your child about it. If you don't yell, you know? But I feel like which obviously, when I think about it, I'm like, that's not very good. But can you kind of describe a little bit about habit training and some ideas just to get a young mom started in what it looks like, maybe if they're even just trying to teach their child to get dressed or to go to the bathroom or turn off the light every time or shut the door every time when they go outside. Just kind of for those of us that didn't know about Charlotte Mason, can you share a little bit about what that process would look like?
Absolutely. I also did not know about habit training outside of a form of, I guess, behavioralism. Like probably would have been more what I thought moms were doing. And also that it was anything more than just doing chores. Like growing up, chores were just kind of the main bit in our house. And so Mason really did blow open the door for me in habits. And the principle to keep in mind is you're just trying to set the norm for your children. That I think helps shape a mom because, you know, moms need to be equipped to be able to make decisions and implement things in their own homes with their actual children and with their husbands, right? Like copy and pasting from the internet can be dangerous. So that's kind of the thing. Think about, talk to your husband. What do we want the norm for this part of our life to be? What is it that we want our children to know? And when we think about that as Christian mothers, it's great because no matter where you fall theologically, you can still set the norm to Christian habits. And I always think about it like if you had a terrible habit of lying, let's say you were a liar, and then you came to know Christ and you converted and he became your savior, the next day you're still actually going to be a liar. That habit of lying, sadly, does not leave you overnight. And so we want to, no matter again, how you think of your children theologically, we want to help them already have habits of Christian living to just make the path they're walking on a little bit easier. So it could be that your habit in your home is that when you have sinned against your brother, you must always, always go and ask for forgiveness. And the other one must extend it and there must be a hug of peace or something, right? And you just make that your habit. So then when your child is maybe 21 and someone upsets them at college and they don't want to speak to them, they don't want to offer forgiveness, something will feel off because the habit you gave them was to seek reconciliation if possible. And so that goes down to brushing your teeth. You want your children to care for their bodies, to treat their bodies with respect, to ultimately grow and protect them. I think we could all think as they age what that might do in the age of the internet. If they know bodies are to be cared for, well, they're not going to look at certain things, hopefully, or they're not going to let people touch them. Like you can really take these habits and see where they could go. So the way you teach a Mason habit, which I think is actually really brilliant, is first you start with prayer. That is literally what Charlotte Mason says, pray for help. And then depending on the age of your child, you could have a conversation with them that's like, hey, I'm going to help you work on this thing this summer. Your room, it can become a dark cave of wonders and we don't know what we're going to find in there. We're going to work at keeping your room clean. But you come at it as I'm your partner and I'm your helper, not I'm yelling at you and that's the only way to get excellent results here, right? Like we want to have this camaraderie with our children while also being the authority. So then you may set up a path for them. You may say, before you come down for breakfast, your bed must be made, all clothes must be in the hamper, and you must have put your toys in your toy box. If they can handle 3 things. If they can't, don't do that. If you overwhelm them, the habit will never happen. And that's a big part with little kids. I think we can often expect like a 5-year-old to be able to do a 5-step chore process. Maybe not. Depending on the child, depending on the gender, possibly not. But maybe it's one instruction at a time. Okay, go make your bed and then come let me know when it's done. And then I'll give you your next thing. You have to think about the child at hand because again, you're wanting to support and help them. Then you have to go and check the work. You can't assume the work has been done on any habit that you are teaching. And then you have to hold the line. So if you walk by and, you know, little Sarah has been making her bed for weeks and you walk by and it's not made and you're like, well, she's been doing a great job. I'll just let it go this time. No, Sarah will never make her bed again. As quickly as it can be undone, it will be undone. It's a maddening part of habits. It takes forever to get the right track going and so quickly it can derail. So you have to call Sarah back and just remind her. Now, depending on the age of your child, you might offer a lot of reminders. You might just say, what did we forget? And you make them think about what they forgot. This kind of ages with the child and their ability. But that's pretty much it. You help create the habit and you hold the line. So typically, if you have a lot of little kids, I say don't do too many habits at one time. Train them as a pod. So all of them are learning to clean their rooms at the same time. All of them are learning about brushing your teeth, using the bathroom, washing your hands, getting dressed, like that set of habits. And it's just a little bit easier for a mom to hold on to. Playing whack-a-mole with a bunch of little kids is always really exhausting and it's likely the habits won't stick. And then always consider with habits, if it's not happening, one troubleshooting thing that I think is important is ask yourself, is it unwillingness or is it like a lack of knowledge? So is it that your child is just refusing to do the thing, or have you not actually taught your child how to do the thing? Sometimes we think we can just say, okay, go put all the toys away in the living room, but we've never actually shown the kids that this Lego set goes in this tub and these stuffed animals have to go back in this basket, and they might just need a little help.
So what if it is because that totally makes sense. And I have fallen into that too, of like expecting a child to do something they're not capable of and then allowing them to do a sloppy job because of that. What if it is the other category of like unwillingness? Like say you send your child to go make their bed and you come check on them 2 minutes later and they're playing Legos in their room or something. What would the remedy be there, or your recommendation be there?
That's a really good question. It really will depend on the child. You're going to have to problem solve as a mom. So is it that they are naturally a dawdler? And so they just kind of walk up the stairs slowly and they have to run their hand down the full hallway. And, you're just like,
we have one. We have one.
let's go. Everyone pretty much has a dawdler in the family. So there's the dawdler. There's the easily distractible. And it's not of a hard heart. It's just they can't pay attention. That's the problem, is they can't pay attention. And then you have the obstinate child who just does not want to do what they were told. And so you have to almost figure out the heart problem in order to work on the right solution. And so with something like, I would say anyone just under 6, honestly, just like the 5 and under crowd, if they can't do it on their own, you are now locked in as their best friend helper. So if you have a child where you say go put on their shoes and they're going to get lost on the way or they're not going to do it, you grab their hand cheerfully with a big smile on your face and you say, let's go put on your shoes, or time to put on your shoes, and you walk that child to the shoes. And you sit down and you put the shoes on, all the while being friendly and kind and compassionate towards them because they are small and life is hard. And then you get the shoes on, you say, good job obeying. And you keep doing that until you cannot grab their hand, but they'll walk with you. And then you're not putting on the shoes, you're standing there while they put on the shoes. And you just slowly pull back until the habit has been established. It could be making the bed, you're gonna have to go upstairs. Sometimes I think the hardest thing for moms, and I remember this, is you just don't wanna have to follow through. You would almost rather yell at the child, remind the child, which if you remind a bunch and a bunch and a bunch, they're never gonna listen to you because they know you're gonna keep saying it. You don't want to have to get up off the couch. You don't want to have to leave the baby. You don't have to stop cooking, but you have to if you're going to teach a habit. You have to follow through. Ultimately, the boundary sits with you. It's not the child's job to hold the boundary you're giving them. It's ultimately yours. And that took me probably too many years in motherhood to figure out that really, ultimately, it's on me if it doesn't get done, especially when they're little. So you just have to decide, if you say it, it's going to be done. But that also will teach you not to say something if you can't follow through in the moment. Like if you are changing a baby's diaper and the toddler is hitting you in the head with a pillow, it's not the time to tell your dawdling 4-year-old to go and grab something from the other room, because they're not going to do it. And then they've just learned the habit of inattention and disobedience. Right. And you don't want to allow that to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's so much discernment in those moments of like, I could give a command, but I should not, because then I will teach them. And again, it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. There's not this neutral ground in habits either, where you think I'll just give a command and get away with it just this once. It actually teaches them. It just moves the nodule one step over towards, I could get away with not falling through this boundary, which is so hard as a mom.
Yeah, you're basically making more work for yourself, which is also not what moms want. I think one thing to help is to remember that your position of authority has been given to you by God, and you should not take lightly that you've given your child a likely chance to disobey God. So like if you know, this was hard for me. If you know you have a child that when you give a command will probably not follow through, and you still give it, and you're not there to help support, you just allow them to disobey. And that brings some gravity to it and some responsibility. But also, if I could just add, to the mom listening who's like, oh no, my habits are a mess, I've been doing this all wrong, welcome to the club. Like, this is our own sanctification. This is our own learning. This is honestly us being parented by God as we learn to parent. You are not going to be perfect. And being a perfect mother really wouldn't help your children ultimately, because they live in a broken world. So if you can show them how you go and ask their forgiveness, like, hey, I was not clear about this. I have not helped you well. Forgive me. I'm going to be working on this. That models in healthy living, good habits, and right living. So even those chances, if you're willing to be humble and bring them to God and bring them to your family and make a plan that works, those things are also fruitful for your kids. So just for the mom with the high ideals like me who crumbles sometimes when she hears things like that, that is the ideal, but reality is going to be a more beautiful but also more humbling experience.
That's good. Yeah. Because ultimately we want them to learn how to repent, not just Yeah, not be perfect, because nobody is, but to repent and turn to Christ. That's really beautiful. Oh, I'm so tempted to just keep asking you questions, but I know our time is short. But first, do you mind just sharing with our audience a little bit about where they can find more of your work? Because you do such wonderful work. I'm sure they would love to.
Well, thank you. You can find me at The Commonplace, which is a play on the idea of a commonplace book, because what I'm offering is the eternal wisdom rooted in the past and in the classical tradition. And so it's basically me narrating my commonplace book to you. And so I have a podcast. There are 4 seasons there. I also am on YouTube as The Commonplace as well, which is a little bit more fun and practical than the podcast, which can lean a little more philosophical. And then I have something called Mother Academia for the mom who is looking to kind of give herself a classical education as she realizes she wants to become that which she is aiming for her children. And Common House, where we talk all about homeschooling in particular.
Oh, well, definitely go check out those resources if you haven't already. And Autumn, thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It was a blast.